Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here. I'm doing sort of a recap of the Paris Games Week Sony PlayStation conference, going through just talking about some of the games that I noticed that really stood out to me. This won't be like me going through like every single game and stuff like that, because they showed off actually quite a few, a lot of new VR stuff, a lot of indie stuff that was coming out. But I wanted to take the time. I didn't decide to do like a full top 10 list or anything like I do when it's E3 time, but Sony decided to make some fairly big announcements, which is really the only reason that Paris Games Week is even on my radar this year. Because normally it's like, oh, I hear about Paris Games Week, and it's like, okay, it's E3. Then after that, I would say it's Tokyo Game Show, and then it pretty much like the PAX stuff, and then Paris Games Week is like you barely ever hear anything about that. And PAX is really rarely new announcements. It's just like here's like a couple of cool things from PAX. But this year, Sony, I guess, was like, yeah, let's do it up. It's just going to be us, making a huge announcement. So they made a full conference, and it was actually really good. So I'm just going to start from the beginning. I saw this on the PlayStation YouTube channel, so I don't know, it might be different for you guys, but I watched like the whole thing where they have like people talk a little bit in the beginning, and they have some stuff at the end as well. So just starting from the very beginning, we have the VR game Sprint Vector. If I could possibly afford PSVR, this would be one of the games I would love to get. It looked really fun, and it's like, I would love to play that sort of fast-paced, just running crazy over-the-top, hyper-stylized action game where, it's really a race where you're running through. They have like parts where it's basically like rock climbing, you're jumping over stuff, and you're moving at like super speeds. There's parts where it seems like you're just legitimately like flying through the air, and it seemed like it was just really entertaining. I was like, that seems like it would be a ton of fun, and who knows if the other players that we got to see in the actual trailer were real people or not. I'm sure they have that, because why only have it where it's just you versus a bunch of bots all the time? So I'm sure that's an online, multiplayer sort of game, and that seems like it would be great. Like I said, if I could possibly afford the PSVR, I would have it already. I would only have like one game to use it on, and that would probably be Resident Evil 7. But this is definitely one of those things where it's like, you got Resident Evil 7, which is like the breakout VR game above, pretty much anything else. Everything else is kind of like, little demo stuff, or, very, minute, rail shooter type of games. But this is definitely a step forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it in action. It's definitely a crazy, fast-paced trailer, but I would love to see some more on that. So I think Sprint Vector definitely looks pretty cool. So that was the first thing that really caught my attention. And pretty much right after that was the horror game, Stifled. Also PSVR. That's another one. I love horror. It's my favorite genre. So that's another reason to be like, all right, PSVR is definitely coming into the fold. An official horror game specifically made for VR. So I like that idea. It uses like echolocation. So you're a character who cannot see. So you throw something out into the world, and it creates that sound wave. So I was like, all right, this is what's around me. But you also have these crazy monsters that can hear as well. So you have to be really careful and kind of, make sure you know exactly where you're going, and be like, okay, I'm going to go this far without throwing anything, because that's how far I could see. Or I'm going to push it a little bit further and go even past that, just so I can throw a rock later, rather than do it, faster and faster, and then eventually alert whatever these crazy monsters are. So love that idea. Very simple, but very fun, especially with it being in VR. And I do wonder, how far they're going to go with the movements. Like, if you can actually use your hands, could you like, tap on something if you, if you happen to have both controllers, or both of the actual PSVR controllers. I think it'll be really cool. Just another layer to it. Like pretty much all VR games, like you can technically do it with the controller, but with this sort of game, with it being sound based, I think they can certainly add that element in. It's like, okay, if you don't have the controllers, you're just using a regular PS4 controller, you might not have that added bonus. But if you happen to have both of the, the Move controllers, you can move your hands individually and maybe like tap on a wall, and it'll, it's just like another layer to add to that, that specific style of the game. So love that idea. Love the fact that it's horror based. It's not, because there was definitely a game that was a lot like that. I can't remember what it was, but I feel like it did almost the exact same thing, where you can only see when you make sound. But putting it into the horror genre definitely changes it up, and with it being VR, I'm sure there's a lot of extra elements to that. So love that idea. That's really cool. Once again, if I could afford VR, this is definitely one of those games where I'm like, yeah, I would totally pick that up, because I love horror, and that's just another cool concept to throw into that. So I thought that was really good. After that was the game Ori, which looked absolutely phenomenal. That's really like the main reason. Like, I looked at it and I was like, that game just looks beautiful. It seems like it's very Journey-esque, whereas we might not even have characters that talk. We do have two characters, a boy and a girl. The girl can turn into a dragon. We don't really know what the boy can do. We see a part where he like goes through basically like this little portal, but that's pretty much it with his character. But she can turn into this red dragon, and the story is basically that like these giant ancient creatures kind of stop doing the jobs that they were meant to do, so you kind of have to set them back on the right path. But visually, it's a great looking game, and it's already out. That came out, actually Stifled is out now as well. It's like, it's already out there. So I thought both of those were actually really cool. But yeah, I thought that was actually really great. And I think, like I said, it was the visuals that really drew me in for that one, but I could see that game being fun too. Much like Journey, where it's like, man, you really just see the visuals and it's like, holy crap, that looks amazing. But then you can get into the story and kind of, make up some of your own elements in conjunction with what the developers actually put in themselves. So I thought that looked really, really well. So I would love to get that at some point, but for now, I'll kind of hold off. But it definitely looks beautiful. It looked absolutely amazing. After that, the big game, and I actually just did a video for this, and that is Ghost of Tsushima. That game looks great. I can't wait to check that game out. I think it was great. If you want to get like more detail on what I think about that game, you can check out my yay or nay video, which is just like, I always do that when games are announced. I might do one. Well, I probably won't do one for some of the other games that were announced here because they were all like, little VR games. So I probably won't do that. But this is done by Sucker Punch, so I was like, it's definitely going to be a AAA title. I have to make sure I do, a yay or nay video on that and see what, kind of where the consensus is for people. But ultimately, visuals look absolutely phenomenal. Love samurai. I love that, just the whole culture, Japanese culture of samurai and Japanese culture in general, really. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I just cannot wait to see what Sucker Punch does with that story. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. After that was actually Concrete Genie. I don't know if I'll ever pick this game up, but it definitely caught my attention. I love the way it looked. The visuals were great as far as, you have this kid and you can pretty much paint whatever you want on the walls, and then these creatures that you make, they can breathe fire and, help you get to new locations, or they can use electric powers to open up doors for you. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then it goes through this story of this kid who's being bullied, but he's being helped out by the creatures that he actually creates, and it allows for him to get from place to place. It's a platformer, and I thought it looked great. And it did make me wonder. I was like, okay, so as great as this looks, it just makes me wonder. It's one of those games where it's like, how much of all this beauty is required to kind of keep going? Because at some point, you're going to kind of stop and be like, okay, drew this cool image on the wall here, and then you spend it seems like one of those games where you spend a ton of time kind of doing something you don't need to do, but it's still entertaining. So it's that sort of thing where it's like, I want to just kind of push through the game. It's like, I also just want to make all these cool little creatures, but it does make me wonder how much of that actually helps, because they show where it's like, there's waterfall and rocks and trees. It's like, all of that's just visual stuff, and it looks cool, but how much is that really going to play into exactly what I need? Like, how often am I going to need to visually create those rocks, or put like a fake moon on the building? Like, are all of those elements going to be incorporated? I would love to see that. Like, if you put a fake moon on a building, would that, light up the building on the inside or something like that? If, you put the moon on the outside and then you go in the building, you still see the moon on the inside, that sort of thing, because it's pitch black or the power's out inside the building, but you can see the moonlight no matter which side of the wall you're on. I think that would be cool. So there's certainly elements like that where I wonder how far, are all of these little animations going to go as far as me painting on the wall and stuff. Like, how much of it is really going to matter? So I think when I see more of that, that might kind of swing me a little bit more towards picking the game up. But for now, it's definitely a beautiful game visually, and I am curious to learn a lot more about it. So I'm definitely excited for it. Just need a little bit more information to know whether or not I'm going to go ahead and pick that one up in the future. After that, we have the another VR game, Blood and Truth. Now this is actually, it's basically the sequel to, I don't even know the name of the game, but it was basically the only shoot 'em up game on the VR, and it was like the British gangster sort of game where you go through and you shoot people up. This one, they kind of up the ante. You can actually move, you can dual wield, you can peek around corners and stuff like that. So I was like, that looks really great. You can actually move around. That's definitely super, super cool. So looking forward to that. Once again, that's just the the VR thing where it's like, who knows, if I win it, then that would be beautiful, or if I just win the lottery, I'll definitely get PSVR. But for now, it'll just be cool to see and hear what other people have to say about it. Speaking of Blood and Truth, it actually does remind me of another game. I forgot to get a picture because I just took a bunch of pictures of everything. Chinatown, or no, not Chinatown, Hong Kong Massacre. That was something that was shown officially before the press conference. It was around the time with the sprint vector thing. And that looked really cool. It seemed like it's basically a top-down, I would assume it's a twin-stick shooter. I couldn't tell 100%, but the character did have two guns. So I was like, I believe you can aim both, you might be able to aim both guns at once, or if it is just the, normal twin stick shooter, you just move the character around and you just aim both guns in one direction. But either way, it looked really cool. It definitely made me think of like, it was like a John Woo sort of style. Like it legitimately looked like a John Woo film, and I was like, I could tell like this character's like in a suit. I was like, I feel like that's supposed to look like Chow Yun-fat when he was doing like Hard Boiled and some of the other John Woo films. And I'm like, I feel like that was the whole point. And then of course the end, and it's called the Hong Kong Massacre. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the whole point of this is to be an epic reference to Hard Boiled and put that stuff in there, which we've had that before. I can't think of the name of that game, but I do own it on the 360. There is like a John Woo video game where you play as Chow Yun-fat. It's a simple shoot 'em up sort of game. It was fun, but that's pretty much it. You just run around and you shoot people, and I think this is gonna be cool. I'm curious how deep the story's really gonna go with it, but visually, I was like, I like this. Like the styling of it looks great, even though it's from top down. It's like if the perspective changes a little, it's like that's like visually it's still great 3D and stuff. So looks really good. Looks like it can be a simple shoot 'em up game with some really cool action, because he was like, I believe there's a part where he does like jump through windows and you can jump over stuff. So forgot to take a picture of that, but fortunately Blood and Truth did remind me, and I'm looking forward. The Hong Kong Massacre thing, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna end up picking it up. I'll have to see a little bit more of it just to be sure, but right now it's like, yeah, I definitely want to get that game, because I love Hong Kong movies, martial arts and stuff like that. This is sort of the the gunplay version of that, gun martial arts. So we'll love to see that in game form, done pretty well. Seen it, it's been done twice, and I would say it's been done with the John Woo game, and then there was also Jet Li had a game that came out on like PS2. It was like, I forgot what it was called. It was something, Honor of the Dragon or something like that. And that was kind of the same thing. You did actually fight in that game hand to hand, but there was also like shoot 'em up portions. I wish I still had that game. It was actually one of those weird things where it was like, this is a game based off of just a dude because he's famous for martial arts, but it actually wasn't a horrible game. It was simple, but it wasn't a horrible game. Like the combat was very interesting because you actually fought using the analog stick. Like you didn't use the buttons to fight, you would use the analog stick, and you could unlock other moves. Like if you did the analog in a circle, he would basically do like a breakdance move, and it was like, that's very unique. You don't really get that in games. So it's been done only twice, so having it a third time wouldn't be too bad, especially after all these years. But that was definitely good. Moving on, we have Monster Hunter World. I was excited for that. I still think it looks kind of cool, but they added in a little thing where it's like, hey, you can get Alloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I just wanted to randomly mention that. I never really played Monster Hunter, but when it was announced before at E3, I definitely thought it looked cool. I was like, okay, this might be the one that I pick up because it's not just on PSP anymore. So I thought that was really cool. Or PSP, the PSP technically is super old. But I was like, okay, that's definitely cool, and it, it's still looking good. Them showing a lot more of the world and seeing other characters in there, NPCs as well as I believe they showed some player characters. It was kind of hard to tell exactly, who was really a person, who was just all NPC stuff. So I don't really know the mechanics of the game, so I don't know exactly, if all those characters on the ship were NPCs, because they were all doing random things. But I was like, I don't know Monster Hunter, so some of those could actually be actual players. But it definitely looked cool. I was like, all right, we see a little bit more of it. They do have a beta coming out for people that are super interested, so that should be pretty cool. And I'm excited to check out some videos on that and kind of see where things lie with that game. But I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. Of course, after that is the SpiderMan trailer. We got a new SpiderMan trailer. Looked pretty simple, but looked really good. I really enjoyed it. They touch a little bit on the story. Peter working with Miles Morales, I thought was great. Him taking them like to the soup kitchen and stuff. Mary Jane, doing the investigative thing. It seemed like in a part of that trailer, we actually play as Mary Jane. I think it was when they were, I want to say that was Grand Central Station. That's what it looked like to me. But it seemed like there was a part where she's like sneaking behind some suitcases and stuff to hide from the enemies. It looked like, with the way it was like right over her shoulder, it seemed like we were actually controlling her. So it seems like we might actually play as Mary Jane during some of these crazy portions, and we'll watch Peter, kind of perform some of these actions as Spider-Man as we try to survive and do our own thing in the background and maybe get some clues. And maybe that's how they'll add to it with sort of the idea of Peter, of course, being a photojournalist. Kind of adding that in with Mary Jane, and they kind of work together a little bit in some of the crazier situations. If that was Mary Jane, she did have red hair, so I'm assuming that that's supposed to be her. It was realistic red hair too. It wasn't, it was like darker. It wasn't like the super bright, vibrant, which is very rare to actually see in real life. But that's like Mary Jane's thing, is like typically it's very vibrant. At least in the comics, of course. In real life, it's very rare to actually see that where it's that vibrant, like her hair color. But I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because normally even in the video games, they always do the vibrant comic version where it's like, it's full on red. It's not really like, kind of orangish red. It's like full on red hair. So in this, I was like, oh, that's interesting that they did kind of the sort of toned down version, which I feel like they do that in the cartoons a lot, but I always felt like in the games, they always played up the more comic style of the coloring of her hair. But thought it was really cool. Love Spider-Man, so I'm just excited. Everything seemed like it was all cutscene based, so it wasn't really too much from that. I'm sure some of that stuff was definitely some of the contextual moments like we saw in like the first gameplay trailer, like the part where he kicks a dude outside of a car, like he swings into the car and kicks him out and like blows the door off. I'm sure that was something that you actually activate yourself, and then that was just, like I said, it was contextualized, and then it goes into the motion of him kicking the dude out the door and all that stuff. So I'm sure a lot of those moments were definitely like just before or just after some button inputs, but for the most part it wasn't just like some of the freeform combat. I would have loved to have seen more of that, but it was definitely, they were kind of just keeping things moving. Like there was hardly any gameplay like at all, and pretty much like the entire thing was just like boom boom boom, quick demo, and then move on to the next thing, which is actually Detroit being human or become human. This game is definitely advanced over time. Like they have shown, it started off where it was like the one character who was the cop, and then it shifted with the second trailer where there was the character who was just like, a normal robot, where it was like, we need to rebel and stuff like that. Or I think it was, I think it was a robot. I can't even remember if that was a human character or a robot at this point. But then this one is another new character with Kara, and she's, of course, another one of the robots, and she's in this home where the father is abusive, and they kind of go through those elements. And the way that they do this, it's very interesting, because it's just like, I mean, and of course it's Quantic Dream, so they've done like even Heavy Rain, which is like the first one, that started with, boom, here's like 3 characters as the main characters. So it does make me wonder, like every time we see this game, it's like, here's a brand new person you didn't see before. So it's like, all right, how many characters are we going to get? And it certainly makes me wonder, how relevant are these characters going to really end up becoming as a part of each other's storylines? Because of course it's, these robots basically forming their own thoughts. Like when the robot is supposed to not move, if you don't, then the girl gets hurt by her father, and then she goes to sleep, or she was dead. I was trying to figure out, I was like, I couldn't tell if her eyes were open or not, but it kind of looked like she was just dead, like he beat her to death. But there was like no blood or anything like super, like they really showed that she was actually dead, but the point was to not let her be hurt in general. So they go through all the options just like they did with the last 2 trailers, and I thought it was cool. And it was cool to see it in such a small realm compared to the other 2 trailers, where the first one was, you have this robot working basically for the police against this droid that goes crazy, and it's this whole thing where it's like you have to save this woman's life, and there are helicopters flying around and all this other stuff. And then the second is like a full-on revolution mode, and then this one was just, this is a horrible man who hurts his daughter, and it's just these 3 characters in a house. So I like that idea where they kind of shrunk it down a little bit, where it's like, it's just you. Like, you could do nothing, or you could help this girl, you could kill this guy, she could end up killing him. There are a lot of different ways that it could play out. So I was like, alright, I like how they kind of shrunk it down in this one, where it was just, they're in the house is kind of crappy, he destroyed the robot before because he just loses it and he destroys stuff. So it was interesting. I like the way that they did that, and I am oddly excited for this. I never really cared much for the other games, beyond Two Souls and Heavy Rain before. I was like, okay, it's cool. I played a demo of Heavy Rain a long time ago. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, even in the demo, there was stuff that I missed, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was never like that deeply invested in it. And this one, I feel like it's different. It seems more entertaining. Maybe it's just because the story is, robots kind of becoming self-aware and that sort of thing. That always entertains me as a story. But I don't know. I'm definitely looking forward to that game, and I can't wait till it comes out and I'll check out some reviews. I don't think that's like a day one thing for me, but definitely be checking out some reviews for that, because I think I'll end up picking that game up. But after that, we had God of War, which was really like one of the few things where it was like, here's just gameplay, and they kind of touch on that a little bit with the next game as well, or the next 2 games really. But with God of War, it was definitely awesome. Very short. I think that was shorter than some of the other trailers that were in there. I think it may have, oddly enough, been like just about the same length as the SpiderMan trailer, and it was like legitimate gameplay. Like they go through, they have a funny little moment where his son's like, oh, it's a soul eater. If it kills us, there's no hell, there's no Valhalla, it's just nothing. And then Kratos is like, it's not attacking. He's like, oh, well, Mom made it seem really, way scarier than that. So they go down, they fight a couple creatures. We see, we see the shield for like half a second. He brings up the shield, then it goes away. Excuse me, and it's just him using the axe. But it was super cool. I love the new axe. It's like the axe is like his main weapon. I'll miss the Blades of Olympus because it was just cool to have like chain whip swords. It was really sweet. But the axe is awesome. It's an ice axe that can freeze enemies. He can toss it and it comes back to him. It's like Thor with Mjolnir, and he'll just launch it. And his son gives him like ideas. He's like, look out behind you. And he threw the axe, and then his son was behind the enemy, and he kicks him, and then like this red circle is like shrinking, and if you hit it in time, you get like a contextual hit. I was like, that's actually pretty awesome. And then his son was like, above us, and so he just throws the axe up in the air, and he chops off, like he hits a random body that was on the string, but he also hits the lantern that kills the enemies, and then the camera goes down. And he just puts his hand out and it's just like boom, and the axe comes back. And I was like, that was really cool. Like it was so simple. It was basically stuff we'd seen before. Really the only added element was the fact that his son was kind of helping him out. It was like, hey, behind you, and him doing like the little kick where he kicked the enemy towards Kratos, and then Kratos got another punch in. And I was like, that's actually pretty awesome. So you can see how that could change up, especially with some of the other weapons, because he threw the axe. So I would assume if that happened and he, hit the enemy, maybe he like bum rushed him and it stumbled back, and then his son kicked him forward. If he had the axe in his hand still, that probably would have looked like a different move instead of just the punch that he gave. So I was like, that's cool. There's so many possibilities there. Plus all the weapons we haven't seen yet. So thought that was great. As short as it was, absolutely phenomenal. Can't wait. That's a day one. Like I've been waiting for God of War, officially like God of War 4. I've been waiting for that forever. Like I haven't played any of the in-between games. I just didn't care. I was like, I just want the next story to see where the story goes in the future. So even though I skipped over all of those, I cannot wait for this one. I've been waiting forever for the story to continue past God of War 3. After that, we have the new Shadow of Colossus. Simply put, looks amazing. I will probably pick it up. I have the original, or I have the HD remaster. Never played it because I wanted to do it as like a Let's Play on my channel. Never ended up playing it, and now there's new ones coming out. And I'm like, crap, I should have played it. I should have played it back then. But I don't know, I might still pick it up, especially because there's supposed to be 2 new Colossus in the game, or Colossi, however it's supposed to be. So I'll probably still pick it up. Plus it looked insanely good. I was like, holy crap, that looks way better than, like even the first trailer, this looks better than that. And I was like, wow, it looks so much more better than I was expecting. So definitely excited for that. Then the last thing was The Last of Us Part 2. Much like Ghost of Tsushima, I won't talk too much on this because I actually did do a trailer reaction for that, because that was before I watched like the whole conference. So you can check that out to get like all my details on it. But simply put, looks really cool. Definitely gruesome. The part where they bashed the girl's arms in, I was just like, wow, that seemed as dark as the first game got. Even I was like, that it was more gruesome because it was like a slow burn compared to some of the stuff we saw where it's just like, oh, they killed that dude really fast and it was harsh. That was like just bashing her arm in, and then they were about to do the second one, and that's what made it seem a bit harsher. I feel like it just lasted longer compared to like instant death or like quick little moments in the first game. But definitely excited. I know there's some theories out there. Some people think that that's Ellie's mom, which wasn't something I thought of before, but seems likely. But that's it. Like I said, you guys can check out my full reaction, all my thoughts on that if you want to. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about this conference and what you thought about Paris Games Week in general if you checked out some other news. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.